Kim, what's on your radar?
Well, I have to address this. I am not a Whoopi Goldberg fan, okay? I just have to start off with that, and I hate to defend her, but her recent suspension over her comments regarding the Holocaust, Jews, and race don't merit the 2-week sidelining that she has been handed. Just a refresher, here's what she said.
Have you come to understand that the Nazis saw it as race?
Well,
because they might, asking the Nazis, they would say, yes, it's a racial issue.
Well, see, this is what's interesting to me, because the Nazis lied. It wasn't. They had issues with ethnicity, not with race, because most of the Nazis were white people, and most of the people they were attacking were white people. So to me, I'm thinking, how can you say it's about race if you are fighting each other? So it all really began because I said, how will we explain to children what happened in Nazi Germany? I said, this wasn't racial. This was about white on white. And everybody said, no, it was racial. And so that's what this all came from. So once again, don't write me anymore. I know how you feel. Okay, I already know, I get it. And I'm going to take your word for it and never bring it up again.
Well, she won't be for the next 2 weeks, at least, because she's sitting out from The View. She's been suspended. And, she's got a different view, ironically, even more ironically for a show called The View. The hosts rarely allow other views other than their own. And, look, this is karma for Caryn, right? She gets, by the way, if you don't know, her real name is Caryn Johnson. She adopted the name Whoopi Goldberg. And the fact that she even took on the last name Goldberg is actually a discussion that could be had. And maybe the real reason she should be canceled, if she's going to be canceled at all. And look, I hate to defend somebody who has actively called for the censorship of others with dissenting and just different ideas. Whoopi Goldberg has been at the forefront of the culture of censorship. And so she's getting a bit of a dose of what she's been dishing out. She is getting karma. That is absolutely accurate, and she deserves it, every last bit of it. But for those of us who believe in the discussion of ideas, those of us who believe in allowing for free thought and for people to have different ideas and to hash those things out, this isn't really a win, as much as many conservatives would absolutely love to cheer Whoopi Goldberg being censored or canceled or sidelined. You're seeing a lot of conservatives actually not cheering for this. Now, here's the thing. When it comes to topics, really all topics, but specifically history and science, these topics need to be discussed openly. Instead, we have this culture of diss rather than discuss, and we should be discussing differences in viewpoints when it comes to historical happenings, what really were the causes of history. Science, we've seen this throughout the pandemic. Science has been silenced rather than openly debated. We used to have a culture of if a doctor gave you a diagnosis, you would go to another doctor for a second opinion. Now suddenly you're not allowed to have a second opinion. And we do know that when it comes to history, the victor gets to write what is written in the history books. But not only that, but we should be able to always look back at history and dissect it and pontificate on it a bit more than just what we read in our history books. And that is what Whoopi Goldberg apparently wanted to do. And she has a different view of what happened. She has a different view as to why things unfolded the way that they did. Plenty of people do. She's not alone in her viewpoint. Believe it or not, a good chunk of people actually agree with Whoopi Goldberg. Maybe not her audience, because The View has cultivated a particular type of audience that's watching them. But plenty of other people actually said, I don't know if Whoopi Goldberg was particularly wrong. And that is why her ideas should be discussed rather than just dissed. Rather than silence her and sideline her for 2 weeks, why can't this be a topic of discussion? If you're not going to discuss history and instead it's just going to be something that, no, you read what's in the history book, you accept it, and then you just regurgitate it, and there's no room for nuance, no room for disagreement, no room for discussion, then why are we even learning history? Are we learning it because we're wanting to learn from the past? We're wanting to use those examples, have discussions, and prevent them from happening again? Or are we just using it to shame and to feel guilty? So we need to be able to have these discussions. Now, I get it. A lot of people will say, listen, this isn't canceling. This is fine. This isn't a First Amendment issue because this is a private company. I mean, we could have a debate about that because ABC, definitely, which I believe is what the network that The View is on, they rent the federal airwaves and all of that. But nonetheless, the argument often when it comes to whether or not this is a First Amendment issue, people often reel into the discussion of it isn't because it's a private company. But listen, whether it be a First Amendment issue or not, shouldn't be a discussion that shouldn't be the point. The point for us as a free nation, it isn't just that we're free because our government lets us be free. We're free because we allow each other to be free. So we have to have a reckoning, I believe, in our culture of, are we going to be a culture of freedom or are we going to be a culture of censorship? And that is something that we give to one another. It's not just the government that is over us and they're the ones that decide what we can and cannot say. And it's about whether or not we're going to be harmed by the government or thrown into prison by the government. It's about how we interact with one another, the culture that we have with each other. Are we going to be censoring each other or are we going to allow each other the freedom of having some discussion? And that is, I think, a big aspect missing from the debate when we do talk about freedom of speech. It often just goes into this First Amendment versus private companies, and they could do whatever they want. But really, we should be talking about how we treat each other, how we want each other to behave, how we want this country to be as a culture. That is the big issue, I think, the big takeaway with this. And I want to ask you, Ryan and Robbie, on this. Do you think that Whoopi Goldberg, I mean, look, she's one that has been calling for censorship, and we've seen this a lot. People on the left that have called for censorship, and then suddenly they're getting a dose of their own medicine. Do you think she's going to change when she comes back out, or do you think she's going to continue to be all about the censorship? And I've seen it go both ways. I've seen some people say, I was wrong. I called for censorship. It happened to me. I get it now. I was wrong. Or do you think she's going to just continue on with, nope, the View is one view and one view only?
Yeah, I don't think this is a significant enough punishment to cause her to reflect that, oh, maybe it is wrong to punish people. Now, it's a completely stupid punishment, and I have yet to find someone whose reaction to the 2-week suspension is, oh, good, they really got that right. That's how they should have handled
solve this issue.
Not a single person that I can find thinks this was a good idea. You're right, Kim, though. We have seen, some of the most staunch opponents of cancel culture, kind of the illiberal censorship norms that have come into being. Some of the biggest critics are people who themselves used to support them and then ran afoul of them. I don't sense that Whoopi is going to become one of those, but it's fair to wonder.
There's that joke that a conservative is a liberal who was mugged. And so a cancel culture opponent is a liberal who was canceled.
I've seen it a triple way. So conservative, So liberal gets mugged, becomes conservative. Conservative starts doing drugs, becomes a libertarian. Libertarian gets a job, becomes a liberal because your bosses mistreat you. Liberal starts paying taxes, becomes libertarian.
Becomes the boss. Right.
Yeah. Oh,
so Whoopi's in the phase of starting to wonder if there's, mob mentality and overreaction. You would think she might also kind of reflect on, she thinks that what she was saying is just obvious and to everybody else. She should be wondering, why is everybody so mad about this? And maybe that would help her get to a place where she can understand what she's confused about. She just seems so confused.
Is wrong. I mean, we've now discussed this multiple times, so sorry to go into it again. But she not that it was perfectly legitimate to bring it up again, Kim. I didn't mean to slam your choice of topic. I think it's a great topic. I like talking about it. But the view that the Holocaust is not racial because Jews and Germans were both white, everyone involved was white people, it was white on white crime, is a new and modern view that the term white encompasses both Jewish people, all people of a certain skin pigmentation. She was only looking at race in a literal black and white way. Funny enough, which you're right, Kim, is something a lot of people, I think, in the sort of progressive identity politics liberal circles believe, but is new, is not historically the way it was. Absolutely, at the time of the Holocaust,
Right.
Jews were considered a separate race. Before that, like
Right.
Germans and Polish people and Czechs and Austrians but
But here's
even
the
within
thing.
Germany, like Bavarians and
Right.
Bohemians
They
were a
consider
different race.
Russians an inferior race.
Right.
Slavs.
Right.
Right.
Right. But here's the
Right.
thing: we're having this discussion, so she should be able to have the discussion.
Yes,
I mean, I don't
absolutely,
understand
absolutely.
why silencing her. And this is we see this a lot when it comes to different. It depends on what aspect of history we're talking about. If it's a very sensitive event that happened, something like the Holocaust, and there's others that it's like you're not allowed to even discuss it in a certain way. You're not allowed to compare it to any modern events, which I've always had a problem with, because I feel like, what's the point of learning history if it's not to learn from it so that we can compare it to modern events and say it's kind of happening again. Let's not make that mistake. But it's like we're not allowed to have these discussions. She should be allowed to have that discussion. There's a lot of people who agree with her. That to me seems like that should be the point of the View, is that the View would then hash these types of things out and say, well, this is what we think, this is what I think, and then there's this. We see this a lot on the left, more so. The culture of, let me educate you because I'm the one who knows, because I'm the one who is, right? So let her be educated, right? Let people sit there on the panel and educate her. And that's what should happen. But
Right,
instead, she's being sidelined for 2 weeks, which is very odd.
Yeah, and her reaction on Colbert to say, okay, I get it. I'll take your word for it. I'll never talk about it again. Like that's not what we want. Like we don't want a society where people like disagree, but are like, you know what, fine. I'll just shut up.
I think we're under, actually, Matt Iglesias mentioned this on Twitter the other day. We're not appreciating how much people have just always believed things that are wrong and kooky. Just normal people, celebrities, people of all classes. Now we see all of what we think on social media, and so for some reason, liberals have become very obsessed with, oh no, somebody said something that is not quite right. It has to be stopped. But like people are not more misinformed than they used to be. People are less misinformed than they used to be, in all likelihood.
Or they're becoming more misinformed because we're not even allowed to have the discussion to correct people.
They're becoming more fearful about expressing their views.
One thing I do want to point out, though, is that it's really interesting about cancel culture is you never know what you're going to be canceled for until you're canceled.
True.
And I think Whoopi experienced that, right? Where she thought she was saying something, because she's like the queen of cancel culture. And there she was saying something that she thought, surely I won't be canceled for this because I know all the rules. I made them.
Yeah.
And then here she is getting canceled.
Yep. We'll have to do a segment on what we're all going to get canceled over someday.
Don't build an audience that'll cancel you. I mean, I think I've been very careful even on my own YouTube channel not to build an audience that will cancel you, because they will eventually cancel you for something.
I don't think our audience is going to cancel us. Just
no, this isn't an audience of cancels, of cancelers. But there are shows
You're the good
like
guys.
The View.
We love you. We're talking
Yes.
directly.
They might like to cancel me, but
Only you, Ryan, sometimes.
Only Ryan sometimes. All right, we got to go. Thank you so much, Kim. We'll be back with more Rising right after this.